Hello, you're watching Eye on Africa with me, Yeneli. Your headlines on the continent tonight. A Kenyan court finds that two men guilty of helping Shabaab in the Westgate mall attack. 67 people were killed in the 2013 rampage. Once a world leader in phosphates, Tunisia is now importing the product. We bring you a report on the impact of both COVID-19 and social movements on the country's phosphate industry. And Madagascar's tourism industry continues to suffer due to the coronavirus pandemic. It's a silver lining for the island's lemurs, though, who are able to take a break from their many visitors. But first, a Kenyan court has found two men guilty for taking part in the 2013 jihadist attack on Westgate shopping mall. Al-Shabaab militants killed 67 people in Nairobi that day. The two convicted men are set to be sentenced in around 2 weeks' time. Meanwhile, judges acquitted a third man. James Wilson has the story.
Masked and handcuffed, the three defendants were marched into court, charged with conspiracy to commit a terrorist act and supporting a terrorist group. The trio would learn their fate a full 7 years after the attack on the Westgate shopping mall.
I'm satisfied that the prosecution has proved these charges against the first and the fourth accused persons. I find them guilty and I convict them accordingly.
Mohammed Ahmed Abdi and Hussein Hassan Mustafa will be sentenced on the 22nd of October, while the third defendant, Liban Abdullah Omar, was acquitted because of lack of evidence. A fourth suspect was freed last year.
Justice has been served to the extent that we've gotten convictions. We've gotten those who are aiding and abetting the attackers who perished in Westgate.
The Westgate shopping mall attack shook the nation in September 2013. On a busy Saturday afternoon, 4 gunmen from the militant Islamist group Al-Shabaab arrived at the shopping centre, armed with grenades and assault rifles. What followed was a 4-day siege in which at least 67 people lost their lives. The response of Kenyan authorities was widely criticised as shambolic. Officials issued inaccurate statements, while one officer from an elite police squad was killed by friendly fire from the Kenyan army. All 4 militants died in the siege. Al-Shabaab claimed the attack was carried out in retaliation for Nairobi's decision to deploy troops to Somalia in 2011, and the group have regularly launched terrorist attacks in Kenya since then.
Thousands of people in South Africa were on strike today and out in the streets. They responded to the country's biggest trade union federation, who had called for a walkout. Unions are protesting over unemployment, corruption and gender-based violence, asking President Cyril Ramaphosa's administration to make a, quote, radical economic shift. The Kotasu Federation is usually an ANC ally, but this week it blamed the government for the 2 million jobs lost in the second quarter. It's a unanimous yes in Paris. French MPs voted in favour of returning a small number of stolen artefacts to Benin and Senegal. France's colonial forces looted priceless items such as statues, thrones and sabres back in the 19th century. The bill will now head to the country's Senate. If approved, Paris will restore 26 items to Benin and 2 to Senegal. Currently, an estimated 90,000 African works are owned by French museums. Most of them are at the Quai Branly. Just 3 weeks before Tanzania's presidential election, the main opposition candidate says he's been facing repression. Tundu Lissu's convoy was tear-gassed by police last week. His party's office in Arusha was reportedly firebombed, and the country's electoral commission has disqualified dozens of his colleagues' candidacies for the legislative elections. Critics say John Magufuli's government has tried to silence the opposition ahead of the October 28th presidential poll. These are accusations that the government denies. Here's Chadema's Tundu Lissu speaking earlier.
The campaigning so far, if I speak of a span of the past 1 month, it has gone relatively well. During the first few weeks, we campaigned fairly, very well. The police were very courteous, very professional. But lately, the atmosphere has changed rather dramatically. I think as the political temperatures arising from our campaign have gone up, the regime is getting scared, and therefore they are pulling out all the stops, as it were, using every instrument of power in their capacity, in their possession, to thwart my election campaign. The police have been abusing their authority with complete impunity. The National Electoral Commission suspended me for 7 days on completely spurious grounds, completely bogus grounds.
Next to Tunisia, the North African country used to be the world's 5th biggest exporter of phosphates. Now it's fallen to 12th place and is having to import the product to meet its needs. The chemical is commonly used in fertilizer. Both COVID-19 and social movements have had an impact on the industry, as France 24's Hamdi Talili and Lilia Blaise explain.
In Medina, in the country's southwest, everything has been at a standstill for 15 days in these mining quarries. Young people are blocking access to the site. It's been a recurring event as the government and unemployed miners have yet to reach an agreement.
يجيك مسؤول حل انتاج وخلينا نخدموا شويه وتوا نركحوا امورنا وبقدره ربي يكون كل خير. يفوتك الشهر 2 ما راعك الا تلقى روحك عندك قضيه تجبد تحكي معاه ونهي الوعود نتاعك ما ثمش. اما توا بلوكاج ديفينيتيفمون.
These young people say they were wrong during official recruitment. The company had hired en masse after the revolution to appease social anger. Today, the phosphate company is in financial trouble and says it can't create new positions. But young people don't have many other options in this region. The unemployment rate here stands at 26%.
في بلادي معناها هذا كل خاطر نخدمونا الكاميونات وهذا التراكس هذيك هذه ميكانيك اي حاجه تحطها في مخك نجم نخدمها انا.
In the phosphate washing centers, the situation is the same. The economic impact of this blockade is so big that authorities announced they are importing 40,000 tons of phosphates from Algeria.
كيفاش تقول لي انت تمشي تجيب الفوسفات من الجزائر ها هو الفوسفات اخويا خدمني ويا هزو ها هو.
In Tunis, the employees of the Tunisian chemical group, which turns phosphate into fertilizer, are also expressing their dissatisfaction because their company is at risk of bankruptcy. It has millions of dinars in debts.
حتى توريد الفوسفات لن يحل مشكلة شركة فوسفات قفصة ولن يحل مشكلة المجمع الكيميائي التونسي. فما مشكلة هيكلية يلزم ان بلان دو ريستركتوراسيون جلوبال للشركة أولاً بصفتنا احنا نحكي على شركتنا وللقطاع ككل.
In an email to France 24, the Gafsa Phosphates company said they hope the new government, which has been in power since the beginning of September, will make this issue one of its priorities.
And finally, we head to Madagascar, where the slowdown in tourism has had a silver lining for lemurs. The mammals have been able to breathe a sigh of relief, living without visitors for the past several months. Now, though, tourists are slowly returning, not fast enough, though, for industry workers. This next report filed by our colleagues at AFP.
Andasibe Forest is one of Madagascar's many wildlife tourism destinations. Owing to the coronavirus lockdown and closure of the borders, the lemurs that live here have recently had more alone time than they're used to. Visitor numbers are gradually increasing, but with international flights still suspended, the usual foreign tourists are being replaced by Malagasy people. This family made a 4-hour drive from the capital to come and see their island's iconic creatures.
During the lockdown, I decided I really wanted to get out of Antananarivo when it was over, to visit new places we've never seen before.
I'm really happy to see the lemurs because they're not in captivity. We're seeing them in their natural habitat. It's so exciting to see them up close, to see their way of life, even the way that they eat.
Madagascar's tourism workers welcome the locals, but it's not enough. They need the footfall provided by international flights, though these have not operated since March 2020. This hotel and landowner used to employ around 100 people. The majority of them have now been unemployed for more than 3 months.
D'habitude, à cette période, on est en pleine haute saison et on fait un taux de remplissage de plus de 90%.
Usually at this time of year, it's high season and we'd be 90% full. However, now the tourists are not typical tourists but local visitors, and we're no more than 5 or 10% full.
On a un taux de remplissage qui ne va pas dépasser les 5 ou 10%.
The pandemic is also having a disastrous impact on local nature. Forest guide Pascal has noticed a large increase in deforestation, the like of which he hasn't seen in over 30 years.
Because of the lockdown, many local villagers have cut down the trees for firewood because they can sell it. Others make timber. They're illegally exploiting the forest to make money.
And as the trees burn, so does the natural habitat of the lemurs, mammals that only exist naturally on this island. This is a fragile ecosystem, but it is crucial for Madagascar's tourism industry, a sector that accounts for 7% of the island's economy.
Thank you for watching Eye on Africa. Tonight's show was produced by Laura Di Vezio and her team behind the cameras.